State. My motion is calling for investigation of non-remittance of contribution into the Nigerian Social Insurance Trust Fund, NSITF, by the federal, state, and local governments, parastatals, public corporations, and companies from 2010 to date. The House will recall that the Employee Compensation Act 2010 provides a guarantee and adequate compensation for all employees or their dependents for any death, injury, disease, or disability arising out of or in the course of employment, rehabilitation for employees with work-related disabilities, establishment and maintenance of a solvent compensation fund managed for the interests of the employee or employers, among others. It's worth noting that Section 23 of the Act states that every employer shall, within the first 2 years of the commencement of the Act, make a minimum monthly contribution of 1% of the total monthly payroll into the fund, and subsequently, payment will be passed on estimate of the employee's payroll for the year, actual assessment, or based on minimum assessment. Also note that the private sector players have, to a limited extent, been complied with the provision of the Act, particularly in view of Section 16, subsection 6D of the Public Procurement Act 2007, which makes it mandatory for bidders to have fulfilled all obligations to pay taxes, pension, and social security contributions. However, the federal, state, and local governments and parastatals, public corporations, and companies have failed to make payments of their contribution to the Nigerian Social Insurance Trust Fund, despite the mandatory provision of the Act. Further note that the definition of an employer under Section 73 of the Act is broad and covers all levels of government, given that it defines an employer to include any individual, body, corporate, federal, state, or local government, or any of the government agencies which has entered into a contract of employment to employ any other person as an employee or apprentice. Cognizant that by failing, refusing, or neglecting to pay the statutory contribution to the Nigeria Social Insurance Trust Fund, government at all levels are not only violating the law, but are equally exposing the vast majority of the Nigerian workforce to uninsured and uncovered risk and occupational hazard. And by extension, the large pool of workers cannot be compensated for injuries, mental stress, occupational hazard, hearing impairment, total partial disability, or disfigurement, among others. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, we are aware that only members of the armed forces, including civilian employees of the armed forces, are exempted from mandatory employers' contribution under the Act. Observe that if this abnormality is not addressed, civil and public servants will continue to be shortchanged and remain at the receiving end of a system that exposes them to occupational hazard without any form of insurance or compensation. Resolve that, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable House should set up ad hoc committee to investigate the non-remittance of contribution to the Nigerian Social Insurance Fund by the federal, state, and local government and parastatals, public corporations, and companies, and report back within 6 for further legislative action. I so move.